Radhakund. And we are continuing our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we have the 7th canto, 11th chapter, entitled The Perfect Society for Social Classes. And we are on text 25. Strinam chapati devanam Strinam chapati devanam Tad Shushrushanukulata तत्शुश्रूषानुकूलता तद्बन्धुषु अनुवृत्तिश्च तद्बन्धुषु अनुवृत्तिश्च नित्यं तद्व्रतधारणम् नित्यं तद्व्रतधारणम् स्त्रीणां च पतिदेवानां तत्शुश्रूषानुकूलता तद्बन्धेषु अनुवृत्तेश्च नित्यं तद्व्रतधारणम् स्त्रीणां च पतिदेवानां तत्शुश्रूषानुकूलता तद्बन्धुष्वनुवृत्तिश्च नित्यं तद्व्रतधारणम्. Atajis. स्त्रीणां च पतिदेवानां. So word by word translation. Strinam of women. Cha also Pati Devanam who have accepted their husbands as worshipable. Tat Shushrusha readiness to render service to their husband. Anukulata being favorably disposed towards her husband. Tat Bandhusu onto the friends and relatives of the husband. Anuvriti being similarly disposed to treat them well for the satisfaction of the husband. Cha and Nityam regularly. Tat Vratadharanam accepting the vows of the husband or acting exactly as the husband acts. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचलं पंगुं लंगायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम् Hare Krishna. So we welcome all devotees again. So this is a very interesting and important section of the Srimad Bhagavatam where we discuss about the social classes or the Varna, or literal translation would be the colors. We're going to discuss about colors, Varna. So this is what people don't like to be labeled as, blacks, whites, browns. In Chinese are what? Yellows, isn't it? So we don't like to be labeled as such, and no one, they consider it actually very casteist, racist. But it's named as Varna, so we'll understand what this is about. And particularly, we have seen in the last few verses how the different duties of the Varnas have been mentioned in the last 4 verses. And from this verse, for the next 5 verses, including this verse, we're going to discuss about the duties of women. So I'll read the translation and the purport. The translation says, to render service to the husband, to be always favorably disposed towards the husband, to be equally well disposed towards the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husbands. These are the 4 principles to be followed by women, described as chaste. Just reading that feels like a heavy pill to swallow, isn't it, for most? They'll be like, what? Service to the husband, favorably disposed, second step. Then third, be disposed to the husband's relatives as well. So, anyways, but this is just the first of the 5 verses. So I'm lucky I only have one verse today. So Prabhupada writes in the purport. Let's see what Srila Prabhupada has to enlighten us. It is very important for peaceful householder life that a woman follow the vow of her husband. Any disagreement with the husband's vow will disrupt family life. In this regard, Chanakya Pandit gives a very valuable instruction. Dampatayo kalaho nasti tatra Shri Swayam Agatah. So this is from his Niti Shastra, where he mentions 3 places where Lakshmi will come automatically. So this is just the last line which La Prabhupada picks up, where there is Dampatayo kalaho nasti, where there is no kalaha, where there is no argument between husband and wife, automatically Lakshmi comes in. So prosperity follows where there is a peaceful household life. Of course, the complete verse Prabhupada quotes in many lectures. He says, Murka yatra na pujante. Wherever there's a hmm, wherever a fool is not worshipped, automatically prosperity will come. Dhanyam yatra susanchitam. And wherever there is stocks of grains, so automatically Lakshmi will be there. Dampatayo kalaho nasti. And where there's no fight between husband and wife, tatra shrihi swayam agatah. Lakshmi herself comes. So Prabhupada continues to say, when there are no fights between husband and wife, the goddess of fortune automatically comes to the home. A woman's education should be conducted along the lines indicated in this verse. The basic principle for a chaste woman is to be always favorably disposed to a husband. In Bhagavad Gita 1.40, it is said, Strishu dushratsu varshneya jayate varnashankaraha. If the women are polluted, there will be Varnashankara population. In modern times, the Varnashankara are the hippies who do not follow any regulative injunctions. Another explanation is that when the population is Varnasankara, no one can know who is on what platform. So Varna, if we took the earlier definition, means color. Sankara means to mix. So sometimes when you mix colors, I mean nowadays there used to be very basic colors. Nowadays, if you say a shade of purple, there's indigo, magenta. Prabhu knows better. No? There's so many different cane and there's bluish green, turquoise. So you just have to find a new name for a new mix of a color. So, so in that sense, Varna Sankara is the same thing. When people are so mixed, people do not actually know what they are. The Varnashram system scientifically divides society into four Varnas and four Ashramas. But in Varna Sankara society, there is no such distinctions, and no one can know who is who. In such a society, no one can distinguish between a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra. For peace and happiness in the material world, and this is an important last ending purport. For peace and happiness in the material world, the Varnashram institution must be introduced. The symptoms of one's activities must be defined and one must be educated accordingly. Then spiritual advancement will automatically be possible. So, as many of us in ISKCON have heard and know, that Srila Prabhupada always say that 50% of my work is done, 50% of my work is left, and that is to establish a Daivi Varnashram society. So here Prabhupada himself is writing that one must be very clear with one's activities and one must be educated, meaning trained accordingly. So I thought for today's class we can see, we'll try to see four different themes from this purport. The first is the role of support in Varnashram. So by the way, we have titled our class today as Work, Support and Varnashram. So first we'll see the role of support, and second we'll see the importance of nature and work, what we call as Swabhav. And third, we'll look at the question which many people have: how much is nature, how much is nurture? Nature versus nurture. And third, we'll see how Varna itself is a very vast field. So someone may feel sometimes a little choked up. Why am I placed into this Varna? But the reality is that the Varna is actually an extremely large field. So we look at some examples in that. So let us first look at the first topic: role of support in work, support, and Varna ashram. So now, seeing the sections that we have in this past chapter, so first the duties of the Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, they were mentioned, and then the emergency duties, they were also mentioned, and then all these different duties are mentioned, and then now suddenly duties of women. Someone may think, what, women don't fit in Varnashram? Why give them a separate role? Is it like they are not part of, you have Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudra, and women? It may look like, there's some partiality here. So it is not like that. Every living being has a Varna and every living being has an ashram. But by having this separate section of these 5 verses, this brings up another important point of the role of support which is needed in Varna ashram. So women are definitely part. That's why we hear names like Brahmani, Kshatriyani, Shudrani. Definitely they are part of Varna ashram system. So we can see through an example, an analogy, the marriage or the combination between man and women is like teamwork. And in teamwork, we all know that everyone is working together for the greater good or the greater goal of life. And in teamwork, many a times, most of us can agree, there are unspoken acceptances, non-verbal acceptances. You don't need to speak about it, you don't need to discuss about it. You just accept it. That is teamwork. Many times there are unspoken, non-verbal acceptances. And they are non-verbal or unspoken adjustments even. You don't have to clarify, you don't have to, just understanding is there. So part of teamwork requires that much of faith and unity that sometimes a dialogue is not needed. And that's a very strong teamwork actually, where internally they are very much connected. So similarly, when a husband and wife are married and they are teamwork, this team of a husband and wife, now there's one more aspect of teamwork which is unspoken, unelected, but there's a very clear leader role. If you look back at any teams you're part of, any teams you've been in, any management structure, any kind of organization, although we may say that we are all a team, like five, six of us, but there's always a very clear heavyweight in the group. There's always a very clear person who has a veto power. Now, veto power may be bad, someone say he might be crazy, but it's not like that. A person who ultimately has the final say, a person who has a heavier weight than others. So they're called the heavyweight in the team. Even in school, in colleges, we all have a teamwork assessment, but still they ask you to select a team leader. So similarly, in teamwork, there's a team leader. So in this combination of teamwork between man and women, the man is the selected leader of the team. So he's the heavyweight. Now in our teams, when we work, we generally select the most senior person, the most experienced person, most influential person, whatever it may be, and they become the heavyweight. So if the man takes the team leader role, then in that teamwork, the woman plays the supporting role, and this is as important as much as leading is. So because without support, nothing can be established. So here when Varna Ashram, Varna means work. Basically, we are going to do some work in society. We are going to be functional aspects or give and take from society. All these Varnas are going to give and take from society. They're going to make society function. Prabhupada many times says, that Varna Ashram is the functioning of society. So if you want something to function, they need support. Without support, nothing can be established. So therefore, if you want social functioning, financial functioning, emotional functioning, support is very much needed. So this Varnashram roles is what in today's world we call as a job. Because without work, nothing will work. Everyone needs some work. So here are given some principles or some lakshanas, as the acharyas call it, that for a woman, that these are the qualities to play a supportive role to a husband. Now here the first line, Strinam cha pati devanam. So pati deva, pati here is given like the status of a demigod. So in all the acharyas commentaries, they mention that for a woman they should respect their husband as if one respects the devas. Of course, the man should be qualified to be a deva, to be respected like a deva. So when I read this, I just remembered my childhood, my grandmother. So my grandmother, even though my grandfather passed away, and she would always keep his photo by her side. Every morning, every night, she would go to him and fold her hands and talk to him and pray. And as kids, we used to poke fun at her. It's like he's gone. What are you doing and all? And she said, I don't know. He's the only one person in my life who has taught me everything and supported me and led me, and he's the only one I know in life. He said, she says she goes so far as saying, I don't even know God, I know him. So of course she prays and all, but she felt that husband is everything to her, and she really so much respected him. And because of course my grandfather taught her everything, like basic to go to the market, how to do calculations, and how to this and that, everything. So she was very much indebted to him. So that's like Pati Deva, Pati Dev, as they say, Pati Devanam. So when we see this section, we should not get into a wrong understanding that women did not have Varna, and therefore women is like a um, fifth Varna or something like that. It's not like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudras, and Vaishyas, and then women. It's not like that, because definitely women have Varna. In our recent history, we see many people like Jhansi ki Rani. She was very much a Kshatriyani. It's very clear in her role. In our own Sampradaya, we saw Hemalata Thakurani, who's a daughter of Srinivas Acharya, who was initiating Guru, and who preached very boldly when the moment needed. There's a beautiful story of when this deviant Rup Kaviraj started to write books in the name of Rupa Goswami and taught a wrong philosophy, and no one was actually speaking against him. Nobody, literally. And he was becoming so dangerous that this quiet, simple lady, Hemalata Thakurani, who lived only in one place in Bengal, she did not travel anywhere. She had to come. And I mean, this is like an unprecedented thing, which is written in throughout history as probably the only big thing that she did. She ripped his kantimala off. She removed his kantimala and she She chased him out of society because he said, "You're creating damage." What was he preaching? He was preaching that Rup Kaviraj was preaching that you do not need to follow Ekadasis, you do not need to worship Shaligram, you do not need to worship Tulasi. You can only be an Acharya if you're a renunciant. Householders cannot be an Acharya. And this is all against our Gaudiya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So she had to take up, of course, you don't see her going around history ripping off everyone's Kantimala, but this is one incident where she had to take up to the, stand. And we see other devotees like Ganga Mata Goswamini as well. So they always played a background role, but when needed, they would come to the forelight. But definitely, the male, as the teamwork we were discussing earlier, the male was always holding the primary position, right? As they say, behind every successful man is a woman. So, in this regard, also, there's many examples given like kings, landlords, and people who had vast powers and properties. They would have many wives. So the logic of this, the reason was given that they need more support. What kind of support? So the bigger their task, the bigger their enterprise, the bigger the effort, the bigger the expansion, the bigger the contribution, the more support one needs. And this comes in terms of facilities, enjoyments, things which gives mental space. So especially we see that people sometimes, taking up so much responsibility that they may have some people washing their clothes. And someone else may say that, hey, can't they wash their own clothes themselves? They can, but it takes up mental space. So when someone does so much contribution to society, this is expected. And this is how kings were living. Can you imagine kings? Now we are talking about people who run probably one business or CEO of a company or something. They may have laundromats and washing machines and all. But we're talking about kings who actually control countries and districts and vast lands. They don't have time for small things. They would have to sit, someone would have to put on their boots, someone would have to bring their food, someone would have to this, that, and their whole focus is on administration. So this is a very, I feel, a human principle where a person who has taken up so much responsibility, task, enterprise, effort, expansion, contribution, they need support in that sense. And therefore, the the female role in this regard, as these five principles five verses are going to mention, plays a very important part in keeping the leader sane, in giving them good support. So that is the first thing which I thought we can discuss about the role of support in Varnashram. So here the principles of Varnashram, the duties one should follow, but at the same time support is also mentioned because that is a very real part of the functioning of society today. It's not just about leaders. It's about leaders and supporters and then followers. Second point I thought we can discuss is about the importance of nature and work. Since we are discussing about Varna Ashrama, Varna especially, not Ashram yet, Ashram comes later, but Varna, there's a lot of, thinking in, especially in our spiritual circles, how much to give credit to Varna, how much to give credit to Varna Ashrama, and all that. But we see in Bhagavad Gita, there are two verses which, of the 700 verses, there are two verses which repeat themselves. Now, that itself shows quite significance. The first is the most famous Bhakti surrender verse, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto, 9th chapter and 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that ultimate goal of life, surrender unto me, worship me, always think of me, be within me. So that is the ultimate goal of life. But while we are living in this world, how to live practically? So Krishna repeats another verse. This is the Swadharma verse, where he says that to live in this world, you need to practice a kind of principle. So, these two verses in the Bhagavad Gita, which are repeated twice, they kind of set precedents of how to live in this world and what to aspire for after this world. So, for living in this world, Krishna mentions these two verses twice: Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna Paradharma Swanushthitat. And the same verse comes in 3rd chapter, in 18th chapter again. And in one place he says that if you do somebody else's work, paradharmo, it becomes a bhayavaha. It becomes a vehicle of fear. Bhayavaha. It carries fear. Although you may do someone else's work better, but it's not your work, it becomes a vehicle. You carry fear, you spread fear. How dangerous that is, no? And in 18th chapter, he says that if you do somebody else's duty and not your own, then you are just, apnoti kilbishaim. You're just actually reaping sins. So here brings a beautiful emphasis that how we should understand our nature and work according to what is given. All of us have some this body, this mind, intelligence, false ego, which is a blueprint of our nature. Somehow or other, in today's education or today's society, we live in a very, how let's say, a plastic society, industrial society, where one kind of input and one kind of output is there. There's no variety much. So nobody really cares about who you are or what you do. We see a lot of difficulty. Um, like I met a boy who's 25 years old, who has studied a lot, like did masters and doing PhD, but has zero experience in life, meaning zero work experience. So at 25 years old, when you're carrying PhDs, and when I ask, what interests you in life? I don't know. Like, what have you experienced? What have you done? He said, I don't know. So we find it a bit of a challenge now to guide people when people have never experienced anything. So many of time we have to tell people take some years off, go into volunteering, paid volunteering, go into what is it called? Sabbatical or apprenticeship. What is that? They work with the NGOs. I'm not forgetting the internship, fellowship. Go for a fellowship. So fellowship is where you get paid like a job, but at the same time there's also training given intermediately, and you're also goal orientated organization where responsibility is given. Because sometimes when you volunteer, responsibility is not given to you because he's just a volunteer. When he'll come, when he'll go, isn't it? Volunteers are not so interesting. So now they have a apprenticeship is very selfish in one sense because a person is just very one target oriented. But nowadays we are the way society is going for fellowship. So fellowship is something very interesting. A person gets salary as if it's a paid staff, but there's a timeline. 2 years. In 2 years, as they say in Hindi, karke dikhao. Do something, show something, take full responsibility. They may give them a department to handle, and of course this person is also coming with a lot of experience and exposure, so people like doing this. So if someone doesn't do all this, they'll never understand who they are. If they've never taken any work or any volunteering or any kind of responsible service, they will never understand whether I'm good at leadership or whether I'm horrible at leadership unless they get leadership. Everyone thinks that I can do it because the way in society is shaped today with social media. So people feel that I also can do that. You see a guy traveling around the world, visiting 197 countries around the world. You say, I can do that. And then you see a person who's coming from rag to riches, building up a company for nothing. You say, I can do that. You see a person who becomes a influencer, motivational speaker. You say, I can do that. So we're kind of looking at the frills and we're not really understanding what it means to do it because we're not doing it. It is like third hand enjoyment. You're just watching and thinking that I can do it. So it's actually a very, very dangerous situation. Just yesterday, I met a boy who completed his master's in physics. And he was working, and I was telling, great, you're working now, continue working. He said, no, Prabhu, I want to do my PhD now. I said, that's fine. I'm not against doing PhD. PhD is great. But what's your purpose of doing PhD? He said, if I do PhD, I'll get paid more. I said, no way. No one is going to pay you more for PhD. I said, you have to do publications. PhD is research work. You do publications, you you defend your paper in conferences, you publish journals and intellectual research, then your PhD is valid. So nowadays it's very easy to get a degree because most places, if you pay Indian rupees 40,000, you get a PhD, basic PhD, you know, like yeah, like for physics or some BSc or PhD. So it's more of like you purchasing the degree rather than you actually earning it. So we can't go by this kind of, and but Unfortunately, what kind of impression does it give to the individual? I am qualified. I am learned. I am accredited. But then who am I? So this thing comes where Krishna then fosters, it becomes a bhayavaha. You become a vehicle of fear. A person is a PhD teaching who may not know English. God knows how he published papers, if he even did, but working in some rural setting, who has no heart for research, no heart for any kind of theology or any kind of academic study, but demands a salary that because I have a PhD. So it becomes a vehicle of fear in the society, right? So this is the second point that I thought that we'll like to highlight, that how the importance of nature is to work, that we must try to understand and find out. Now, this also naturally comes to the third question, which is the third part. In our lives, how much of it do we actually know it's our nature, or how much of it is actually nurture? It's a very complex thing, a big confusion in people because of so much of exposure. How much is it actually, is it me? And how much is actually because of my exposure? Nature versus nurture. So, in our training sessions with Her Grace Urmila Mataji in Career Dharma, so it was very interesting in many, many sessions of journeying and discussing and I would say experimenting. We brought people up, few of us sat down and studied the individual. How embarrassing it must be for them, but they didn't know what was happening. But for us, it was very insightful. And they let them speak and we're like, wait, you see what's happening here? And they didn't understand what is happening. Like, see how the reaction, what is he speaking? So, oh, okay, So a live test subject. We thank all the devotees. Like we had 6, 7, 8 test subjects. So, but it was very interesting for us. Dharma, nature, swabhava cannot be suppressed. It will pop out somewhere or another. It will be observed, it will be noticed, especially over a long period of time. If we look today in our lives as practicing Krishna conscious devotees, many times the nature we have, the character, the whatnot, or the engagement, is kind of like consistent from this first day of bhakti. If you look back, very consistent. If you have been in the front, you have always been in the front. If you've been in the back, you've always remained in the back. If you have done this, you've probably done this throughout your life. If someone is a teacher now, they've probably been teaching. So this dharma cannot be suppressed. It will be exposed and it has to come out, and it will only be seen if we do some responsible action. So we have to take up roles of leadership, responsibility, craft. People have to work with their hands. Then they understand whether am I good with my hands or not, because they will immediately understand it. Else, anyone who looks at a beautiful painting, they'll say that, wow, I can do that. Everyone feels like that. So beautiful. I appreciate it. I like art. I think I'm an artist. Hold on. Okay. So all these art skills, we need to give people such exposure to actually find themselves. So when we do counseling, it becomes very difficult when you deal with 25 years old or 28 years old, 30 years old people who are still not settled in life, because time is ticking, isn't it? And I met one boy and he was telling me that, everyone is telling him, you still have time. And he's 26. I said, you don't have time. He said, you still have time. Find out. It's like 26, you don't have time. And it's extremely confused. And this confusion, actually, it's so sad. It leads to a lot of depression, extreme amount of depression. A person who has so much capability becomes sankoch, withdrawn. A person becomes so withdrawn, they do not actually become contributing to society. So then when we have a discussion, you have to go back to their childhood, like therapy, regression, look back into their childhood, find events where they have a consistency of events. For example, that were you always active in group activities? In group activities, do people naturally look at you as the leader? So maybe you have a leadership trait. Although they say, no, I don't like it. Wait. Just see what are the pins and then we'll work on it. So it's very difficult in that sense. Someone else may say, but Prabhu, isn't there astrology? Through astrology, can't one determine one's varna? You can. If you see a nakshatra, every nakshatra is linked to some varna. So, but there's two problems in this. One is to find an actually good astrologer. because nowadays there's a lot of confusion. But let's say you're from a astrologically rich background family or whatever, and for example, your Varna, there's another difficulty in this. The second difficulty is that the fields of work, the Varna itself is so vast. Therefore, when someone knows that, Prabhu, I have an inclination of a Kshatriya, but I still do not know what to do. Because jobs are innumerable, work is innumerable, but your Varna, you understood. So, knowing your Varna is just like the first 5% of the whole endeavor. Fields are vast. To give an example, a king is a Kshatriya, right? King should be a Kshatriya person. The soldier, a foot soldier in the kingdom is also Kshatriya. What is the difference then? Both have this Kshatriya temperament. Both want to fight. Both will run towards crisis. Both want to ensure that people are safe. One is playing on a higher level, and one is playing on his own level. Both feel contributing. So both are Kshatriyas. Now there's a difference between being a manager and being an administrator, right? Or being a CEO head. Just like there's a difference between being a king and being a foot soldier, but both are Kshatriyas. So therefore, the issue second after finding out one's Varna is the Varna itself is so vast. So if you look in Brahmanical societies, for example, it is so huge. Not all Brahmanas like deity worship. We have this, what I say, stigma, Brahmana means deity worship. But not all Brahmanas like deity worship. Some are more inclined towards teaching. Some are more inclined towards the philosophy. So in ancient times, they'll have people with the name Joshi who would do Jyotisha. And there will be those who are more inclined to speaking truth and spreading knowledge. So they are known as the Dikshitars or the Dikshits who actually give Diksha, right? And so there are varieties of people within one Varna. So we should not lump everyone that if you're a Brahma, you must do this, you must do that. I remember one devotee, one of our brahmacharis, who's very, very much Brahmanically inclined. And for many years, he would express that I can do other things, but I'm not interested in deity worship. And everyone would get on his case. How can you say like this? You're a Brahmana, you should do deity worship. But he said that I just don't feel like it. Doesn't mean that a Brahma has to do deity worship. So so now has to do means in what sense? They will do it as a obligation or they may do it as a hobby, but they not do it as their commitment. So here now another difference come in Varna where what is a hobby and what is actually a job. There's a difference. Some people like to paint or do art, but they may not want to do it as a job. So they have that inclination towards it, but I don't want to be recognized for it. I don't want to have the to hold the integrity of artwork. I just like doing it. So many times people confuse a hobby with a job. They say, no, Prabhuji, I like software development. I like playing with gadgets. I think I should be a software engineer. And then they go into software and they're like, oh my God, it's not so fun as I thought. Right? I grew up like this. I grew up with a lot of technical know-how. And so someone told me, that I think you should do software. And I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I don't want to learn all the nitty-gritty of software. I was not so interested in it. So we kind of, misunderstand a hobby with as a job. Job is something that you want to be known for, you can be recognized for, you want to hold up its integrity. So Brahmana who wants to hold up the integrity of deity worship alone, they can do some teaching, but they sometimes may be not known as a teacher. But there are those who are Brahmanas who can do both deity worship and teaching and preaching and initiation. So they have a larger field, they have a larger spread. Just like a king has a larger spread, foot soldier may not. A king can take care of kingdoms, a foot soldier can take care of himself. But both are Kshatriyas. So knowing Varna, I feel, is the only 5% of the whole challenge. Now we need to know individual capacity also. Right. So after nature, nurture is also important. So nurture is important. Why? Because simply having a disposition doesn't mean you can do the job rightly. So nurture means training, or in today's language, it means capacity building. It is important to do the job rightly, dharmically, without corruption. So a person who has the nature would love the nurture. Like if a person is in, for example, managerial position, and there is a seminar on team building or improving efficiency among peers, they'll be like, wow, I need this training. Because that nurture is according to their nature. So they love the training. They would sit for the training, even if it's 15 hours, even if it's 20 hours. And for others who do not have that managerial disposition, they'll be like, oh my God, why so long just to talk about one simple concept? So nature and nurture go together. And therefore now I feel in ISKCON we are doing this Varnashram training, we are taking people and I trying to identify, and it's not so easy as it seems. People say it's so easy, it's not so easy. Because to detect Varna is one thing, and within Varna now there are Varna Bhed. There's so many sub colors and so many different things. And everyone has to be trained a little differently. So so in the last part, this Varna is so vast also. And sometimes there is so much disparity, or there's no clear between the intent of two, which varna does one fit in. For example, if I ask you, artisans, music, what varna does this fit into? Shudra, general understanding. Art, dance, this is like a Shudra trait. But I was very confused growing up because, like in many of our traditions, in many Brahminical traditions, we were told to learn art and to learn music. And I used to think that, this was not a very looked upon profession. Then why are we learning it? So we can see Saraswati Devi is the goddess of both learning as well as arts. So when we study this Varna, we will see that out of the four Varnas, two and two have very similar traits. Brahmanas and Shudras, very similar. They are both very simple. They have to be peaceful, right? And they both function very similarly. And other two traits who are very similar are the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas. Very similar. They're very expansive. They're always thinking about the welfare of all, how to make holistic prosperity, overall societal wealth, as they call it, society's wealth. They're always thinking about the whole society. So these two people and these two people very similar. So sometimes we cannot just jump the gun, as they say. If someone says that I like music, oh Shudra, not like that. We have to see with what intent is a person practicing or doing the job. For example, if a person in artistry, as we like to use the word rather than Shudra, because there's a very bad negative stigma to it. People feel that Shudra means gone case, but not like that. But actually, the artisans are the one who makes life functionable. We have this laptop, we have a software, we have a mobile with a software. It's all thanks to people in artistry. We have a chair, we have a table, we have a clock, right? We have these clothes which keep us warm. It's all thanks to people in artistry. They make life relishable, functionable, right? They increase the pleasures. They create the salt and spices in life. Without them, none of the others can live. In a similar way, right? So we have to see the intent. So someone in artistry, they like music to give pleasure. And someone who is in the field of ideas, opposed to using the word Brahmana, the field ideas, they would give music to spread truth. So you'll hear all those kind of songs which are very shaken up, realization songs. I know I don't want to sing any, but like there are many, when we grow up, we hear like people are just reflecting on life, that in one moment everything turned around me. Very heavy realization songs. Some people are like that who keep singing this kind of realizations. So they are people in ideas. People who write books. Now, people who write books are in which field? In which varna do you feel? Yeah, generally we'll say Brahmana, isn't it? They write books, but not necessarily. You books on what? If someone who writes sensual novels, they're also writers. They're in the field of artistry. because their goal is to create pleasure in people. Manoranjan, you read comics and all these things. They are writers as well. I mean, it requires some amount of brain to write. But those like journalists who speak about truth, so they are come in the category of ideas or brahmanas. So therefore, now understanding that finding varna itself is difficult. After entering to varna, it is vast. And therefore, just knowing one varna is not enough. We need another layer to detect what is your inclination. So one telltale sign which Her Grace Urmila Mataji has done in her Career Dharma book, along with Ruchita Datta Mataji, is she has created this six opulences. So what do a person look for in life? Shad Aishwarya. Aishwarasya, Samagrasya, Viryasya, Yashasha Shriya. So these opulences are there in God and these opulences are there in Jiva. And all of us are looking for a different thing. The person who writes sensual novels, he has jnana aspect. He may not be a Brahmana, but he has the jnana opulence. And therefore he is writing books. Whereas someone else may produce movies. Well, someone else may dance because they have a Shri aspect. They like beauty. So like that, only Varna is not sufficient to understand a person. Even in astrology, if you want to see a person's nature, Nakshatram is not enough. You have to see sun sign, moon sign, this sign, that sign, 15, 20 different things, and then still the person will be unique. Right? Just because two people born on the same nakshatra, having the same every other thing, does not mean what is the ganam. Right? There's only have three ganams: Deva Ganam, Manusha Ganam, Rakshasa Ganam. So that means there's only three kinds of people? No. Permutation and combination of it unlimited. So therefore, now we are trying to understand people's nature. You know how difficult it is? And you ask, is there a perfect tool? No. Is there some tool? Yes. There are some people who have come up with some means trying to understand. And it is very vital, especially for the leaders and educators and those who are guiding others, to somehow put people on the path. They need not understand the technicalities of it. You need not label anyone. You're a Brahmana, you're a Shudra. It's not needed. But put them on the path of understanding what are the principles which nourish them. And these principles are given in the last four verses. The principles of the principles of a Brahmana. You see, it's not job. A Brahmana must be an initiating guru. A Brahmana must write some 20 publications a year. You don't, like in university we had, no? So it's not like that. But these are principles given on what contributes themselves, what gives themselves. A Kshatriya by nature has valor. Therefore, you can have uh, introvert Kshatriyas. You can have introvert Kshatriyas. A person who doesn't speak much, doesn't come to the forefront, who does not do anything, but in the moment of crisis is willing to take up a sword and do the needful and then keep quiet about it later. May not speak about it also. You may have introvert Kshatriyas. It's possible because they fit the principle of a Kshatriya. So this how just expands our whole understanding of Varnas to a whole different level. And we are grateful for all the years, 60 years of ISKCON's growth and so many devotees studying and understanding and discussing and the tolerance and today begins the meetings in Mayapur, the GBC meetings, a lot of churning and a lot of ideas. And it's a beautiful platform. We should all be very supportive of the society. And some people, so last year, I think they announced that we are establishing ISKCON's constitutions. So someone commented, after 60 years, now you have a constitution. Obviously, it takes time, isn't it? Anything organic takes time. So this is the kind of positivity, the kind of knowledge, the kind of awareness, the kind of togetherness, the kind of teamwork that we need to instill and make people understand. Because it's a growing dynamic society with four main varnas working together with all the shades in between, right? And we should avoid the stigma of judging and pointing. One very interesting point, which I'll just end with this, was which Mataji Urmila Mataji shared with us, was that one field of work, one varna will always find another varna's adharmic. So all other three people, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, and the Shudras, will find the Vaishyas as money hoggers. All they love about money is all about money, 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 money. Right? And all the three Varnas, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas will find the Shudras as sense gratifiers. And all the other three Varnas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras will find the Brahmanas as snobbish and, and high-nosed people, who are lazy and parasites to society. And all the other three Varnas, the Brahmanas and the Vaishyas and the Shudras will find the Kshatriyas as power hungry and authoritarian and controlling. And they just don't they don't listen. So this will always happen because our nature is our nature. And therefore, part of that huge thesis of a book which Mataji produced is how to deal with each other respectfully. That when you understand someone else's Varna, you know that, I work on a different mechanism, they work on a different mechanism, they are also important. They can do things which I can't do. So everyone has their contribution because we'll always look at each other like an enemy. Can you imagine what a system God has created? That we are all different, we look at each other differently, but we have to work together. And it's only possible if Krishna consciousness is in between. Right? So I'd like to end here. Thank you all very much for your patient learning. There's like probably a billion questions on this, but I'm not an expert in this. So, and anyway, time is also up. So it's, yeah, thank you all so much. Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Yes, Mataji. Yes. Because we met in 2003 and both of us remembered. So I will definitely take your question, Mataji.
I don't know whether I should shoot the questions one after another or should I just.
You can shoot me and end the questions.
No, first of all, I really, really liked your class. It was very practical. I appreciate all your examples, that it was nuanced. I have so many questions that I don't know where to begin. First of all, I'd just like to make a comment that, or maybe just throw out a question. Is designating devotees with a particular varna appropriate? Ashrams we definitely follow in ISKCON. We clearly have grahastas, vanaprasthas, sannyasis, and brahmacharis. But I'm just throwing it out there. I have my own personal opinion. Is it actually even appropriate to designate a devotee with a varna?
Right now, no, because there's too much stigma around it and inferiority complex, superiority complex. We don't want to go back to that whole, postmodern era of India where that happened. Superiority. I remember my grandfather telling me stories where they would go to school in canteen. This was in Kerala, and they would ask, "What is your caste name?" Oh, for you, this plates. For them, that plates. So they grew up like that. So we don't want to have that. But at the same time, we also understand that a person can't escape that designation. So why can't there be functioning without labeling? When a person can just function without the necessary designation or labeling as a person as such.
Right. So this is the point that Purnachandra Swami, when he wrote the book Obstacles in the Path of Devotional Service, he addresses this in a chapter under Varnashram. Because they tried an experiment in New Vrindavan that failed. To find out one's nature is one's own business. It's like if the shoe fits, you wear it.
Yeah.
You don't say, well, you're a size 10 or you're a size 8. It's for ourselves to discover our nature and engage ourselves appropriately, not to label people, you're this or you're that. And also devotees, the primary designation is you're a devotee, you're a Vaishnav. Now you might be doing some service in a field that is, whatever, administrative or whatever, but the primary designation is das, 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 anudas. So if we kind of get over this, like, okay, that's one of the challenges in implementing Varnashram in our movement. The other one was actually on the verse and purport itself, which you kind of didn't really address.
Thank you.
No, I really do appreciate the fact that you broke it down to a principle, the principle of support, and and how the women are actually the support, and the famous saying, behind every great man is a woman. Um, an exhausted woman. Mataji says exhausted woman.
Keeping
But
up with
what I
all
would
the
like to actually focus on
shenanigans.
is the specific translation and the purport and the challenges we have in society in general and in our movement in particular. And we know the cause of this. I'm just wondering what the solution is. This is just my analysis. The cause is um, I'm not a woman's libber, but I'm also not someone that you can, I don't like to be downtrodden and be, balanced. Um, and it is Kali Yuga, it is this day and age. If I say this, I'd probably be shot by another woman because I really feel modern education creates problems in society for women. And I'm saying that because I have gone through the modern education system. I worked outside India. So it creates, like you were quoting Bhayavaha, right? It creates a fear. Fear for whom? For both men and women. The women having an education, and now you see in society, women are just as qualified as men,
Yeah.
even in our own movement. And yet we have statements like this in scripture which challenge us. I'm so glad my husband's not here. Is he here? Anyway, and I hope he doesn't listen to this recording. But this is one of the
Yes.
purports that I am always, rub my nose in it, and it feels very uncomfortable because two reasons. One, because what the statement is saying, the translation, the verse itself, and the purport is true. It's so true. The problem is, how do I apply this in my life, having this baggage of education, having and I speak not just for myself, but for other women who are qualified in so many ways, how to retain that a mood and attitude of support and, this is my duty, and yet having these kind of roles in society. And that's a big challenge, and especially for women devotees, for
Yeah.
Vaishnavis. So, what would you say would be the solution to
Awesome.
this? Should we can't go
The
back
conference.
to, we
It's
can't
a
go,
conference.
we can't go
Yeah.
back, 100 years and say, okay, look, everyone just stay at home and, just learn how to sew, cook, and do dishes, and whatever, and just have babies and raise families. We can't turn the clock back, but what can we do to make this adjustment so we do have a peaceful society? Let's just, let's clean house ourselves in our own society. How we can do this in our own movement. Because if we can do this in our own movement with qualified Vaishnavis, then we can set an example and say, hey, this is possible. So please enlighten us with a solution.
Not a solution,
And sorry for
some
the
thought.
soliloquy.
But yeah, definitely like Mati shared, this is tough nowadays. It's more difficult. Today, just a couple of days, one devotee girl. So she's extremely successful. She earns a few lakhs a month as a very senior CA person and all, trying to get married now is very difficult for her because all the men that she meet, all the suitors as they call it, are less qualified than her or earn less than her. It's very tough for her. It's very difficult. And she's going through a crisis and anxiety and depression and kind of like, is it because of Krishna conscious? I never used to think like this, and all. So it's such a emotional turmoil that I feel that no one should go through. Again, because of modern education, but the solution is not to drop everything, turn back the clock, because that person individually admit I can't. They've involved so much in doing something. So a lot of understanding, maturity, and education is needed. Verses such as this, sections such as this should not be bypassed. They should be openly discussed. Principles should be understood both by men and women. Men should not use this verse, put it on the door of the house and say, four more are following. You know, they should not do that. At the same time, women should not say that, ah, this is just slandering women, because both chauvinism and feminism both are extremes. So, like the understanding we shared about teamwork, very interesting and funny. One more person shared with me just, I think, yesterday or day before that, in a place maybe in Karnataka or in Andhra, a man got sanctioned divorce from his wife for the reason that the wife did not eat onion and garlic, and she had fanatical behavior. I don't know whether she was a devotee or what, but the high court sounded took the verdict that she was causing mental anxiety to this man, because she did not eat onion garlic and she would do some funny behavior, and the man couldn't take it. He said, my mind is so disturbed having a wife like this. So can you imagine if there is no compatibility? And therefore, in this age, we are going to see people finding compatibility at a later age in life. That will happen. People will take more time. People will go through a lot of ups and downs before settling themselves. And you will find people getting married at a later age. You'll find people doing all these kind of things, which it's easy for the elders to just say that, oh, you waste your life and all, but it's a practical problem. So for those who are doing like Mataji and Prabhuji, who are doing marriage counseling and all, you find this for Premlila Mataji. Premla Mataji and all, who are doing marriage counseling and couple counseling and all, you see millions of cases like this, and the age of people getting settled is going up. People used to get married at 21, 24, now 26, 29, 30, 32, 45. People are going up. So it is just because of that whole confusion and bayavaha that is created, and so much fear and anxiety. And to be very honest, their practice of spirituality also goes for a toss. And many times in such people, when they settle down, then they feel that now I can actually feel Krishna consciousness. All this while, it was just Krishna consciousness riding on a vehicle of fear. So actually, we're not really digesting Krishna consciousness. And therefore, when all of us, not only for Matajis, but even men, when all of us, men, women, whatever we may be, for every individual jiva, if we function according to our nature and see it as a contribution towards the universe, because Krishna is everywhere, see it as a contribution, we become so nourished, naturally become very happy, and naturally bhakti becomes a natural part of life. It is not something that we need to add on to purify my life, which now we can, like putting on deodorant. People put on perfume or deodorant just to make themselves smell good. So we put on little of 16 malas, little of four negative principles, little of guru ashraya, and I smell good. It's not like that. But we actually become very comfortable in our own skin. So a lot of things we need to discuss. And I think one more thing with awareness and education is also avoiding very, very cynical, skeptical, one sided, fanatic remarks. We sometimes you can take this class for a whole nother way. Women should be like this, and women should. This is the problem with women today, and the whole class could just go on like that. But what's the point in bashing anyone when the system itself is not favorable? So, like Mati, you shared that knowing one's dharma is one's own responsibility, but actually it's the responsibility of society as well to help us to find the shoe which fits. At least tell us which shop is selling the shoe. People are walking barefooted. That is shows which shop sells the right shoe for us. So actually, it's all of us. Everyone has to take that responsibility to give the right message, to guide people, to help people, to set good examples, because every one of us has a different nature, and people may see it, they may like it, which we need to explain to them. So I feel it's more of a holistic thing, and therefore it takes time, because it's not just a one person decision changer. I hope, yeah.
Can I make another comment? I really like that last statement you said. People need to know where to buy the shoe. And, there's all kinds of bridge preaching, right? With
Yeah.
yoga, you bring people in. This is a great aspect where we can actually, because people are suffering because they're engaged in professions which are not according to their nature, um, either for prestige, money, power, whatever it is,
No.
and they're not happy. And the solution is, uh, obviously you just can't give them pure bhakti if they're not ready for it. But solution really is how to really say that the Varnashram is so scientific. You find your nature Engage yourself accordingly, and then you'll be happy, and then life is peaceful. And because of that, we're just such unhappy people. We're so unhappy because we're forced to do something that we don't want to do. Rare are those people who are engaged in something that they like. Then it's not work. If you do something you like, even if it's a profession, it's not
Becomes
work.
play.
It's
Work
play.
becomes play.
Work becomes play.
That's in the
No,
Bhagavad Dharma.
yeah, no, it's no longer work. And I was thinking of nature and nurture. I heard one time also that one way to find your nature, and I'm a little confused between you said work and hobby. So I'm a little confused about that because I heard one way to find your nature in terms of what you can do is that if you do it, whether you're recognized or not for it, whether you get paid or not, whether you attain a position, recognition, or whether you don't get that or not, you still do it anyway. You still do it anyway because that is your passion. Am
Hmm.
I correct in my
It'll be difficult in
understanding?
today's age. Everyone needs money. You need to get paid. I may love something, but sometimes if you don't pay, then I will not do it because I need money. So we kind of fail to remunerate people rightly. So I sometimes people say that, oh, whether you don't get paid, it's okay. But sometimes it's not okay. I want to do, but I need to get paid. And
No, no, no. I was thinking in terms of our own movement, at least yeah, forget the grahastas. I'm just thinking of, maybe brahmacharis, for example, right? I, I personally think it's probably easier to ascertain your nature as a brahmachari than it is as a grahasta.
oh, so
And,
many
and
confused
no,
brahmacharis.
no, well, maybe you can correct me, but
Yeah.
the reason I say is because you don't have to say, okay, well, I got to get paid.
Correct, correct.
I don't have to get paid. You choose where your taste lies, and you do that service accordingly. So in that sense, it's easy. I think it's easier for brahmachari as opposed to grahastas who have to do the needful.
So everyone in a varna has a need. Someone in the field of artistry who's providing and contributing to society, they need acknowledgement. So someone who comes and just helps you arrange something and you tell them thank you, that is payment enough, which we fail to do sometimes. Common courtesy, because they need it. Those in the field of artistry, they need acknowledgement. It is not some ego drive or something. Just that what they run off, they run on. So this is need as each varna has, and I think understanding this, we can respect it. A brahmana may not need it; they may just do it and just walk off. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, I don't really care. I liked it. They'll be like that. So we need to also understand certain people. You can't just say that no, just be happy. If no one appreciates you, just keep doing it. A person in the field of artistry cannot function like that. They need it, and we have to be sympathetic. We have to understand. Sometimes all it takes to just tell the person, "Wow, this is amazing. Thank you," and they'll do it twice better. It's so many principles are there, which I find at least in whatever few years that I've spent reading on Varnashram. This book was very, very detailed, actually. So we are going very much over time. I don't want to keep any devotees. If anyone like to leave, they can leave, please. No worries. And probably we'll take questions after the class. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.